Hi, my name is Layton. I'm an intuitive, a mystic, and I just came out with a course. I'm really excited about it, so I figured I would show you guys the first module, which runs at about 35 minutes long. And in the first module, we talk about, because my course is called Overcoming the Lower Doppelganger, and I'm not sure if that many people would know what that was. So I figured this would give a really good introduction to the course and what it's about. So in the first module, I'm going to be talking about the characteristics and manifestations of the lower doppelganger so that you can have some insight into that. And if you don't plan on taking the course at all, that's completely fine. You could still get quite a bit out of the video. It's an extremely fascinating topic and something that has really interested me as someone who used to live my life completely controlled by the shadow self and completely living out as that lower doppelganger. So I really love the lower doppelganger because it not only is this awesome representation of our lower self that is kind of the opposing force to the higher self, if we want to look at it in those more commonly understood New Age terms, but it also exists as our gateway into initiation. So when we're being initiated into higher worlds and we're going deeper into our spiritual path, we are going to come across this figure known as the guardian of the threshold. And the guardian of the threshold is essentially this manifestation that appears to us as our lower doppelganger. It appears to us as all of our fears, all of our, traumas, all of our addictions, all of our temptations, all of these things that we've tried to run from, or these things that potentially hold us back or keep us from being able to see ourselves clearly, see the world clearly. So this is not something that exists as a punishment. It's actually a very beautiful gift, because even though it can be this scary kind of confrontation with this lower aspect of ourselves that might be very difficult to face, within that confrontation, if we are able to really overcome that and integrate certain aspects of ourselves and face ourselves with truth and with clarity, we then become more prepared to go into higher worlds and be able to obtain certain information and be able to really navigate those higher worlds without diluting the things that we are, without diluting our new understanding, or inverting things, or twisting things, or risking, having this information and not being prepared for it and taking it and hurting ourselves with it or hurting the world with it. So this is very important. And even if you don't plan to teach, or even if you don't consider yourself a mystic, if you are just a spiritual person that is going through your day-to-day life and you have things that you feel are holding you back, and you have addictions and you have struggles and you have depression and all of this past trauma, and you don't know how to overcome these things and you feel like you don't have self-control, then this would be a really great course for you. Because we talk all about that. Because I'm someone, I have said this openly so many times, I had no self-control. I mean, literally none. I used to be an alcoholic. I used to be a drug addict. I was addicted to way more than even that. And I came from an extremely dark place, and it took me so many years and so much trial and error to pull myself out of that place, because I didn't have anything like this. I was really just winging it with the few things that I came across the way. And a lot of what also helped me was an understanding of somatic experiencing, an understanding of the nervous system, an understanding of neurobiology, and combining these things with fundamental occult truths really laid the foundation for me to be able to pull myself out of such a very dark place and truly transform from the inside out. I mean, my life looks absolutely nothing like it did before, and these changes were not external. They were very deep within me, and the things that used to live within me, that had given me the desire to live the life that I used to live, don't even exist within me anymore. So many things that I used to do are not even remotely a temptation because of integrating certain aspects and healing from different things and overcoming the lower doppelganger. So when we talk about that, I want to be clear, we're not talking about overcoming in like a new age bypassy way where you just separate yourself from the shadow and you overcome it in the sense that it's just gone and it's not something that you ever have to deal with again. However, when it comes to overcoming this lower self, what you can do is get to a place where you have faced so much of yourself and learned so much in the process and really integrated so many deep truths about yourself and worked on the nervous system and worked on healing the parts of yourself that were attracted to certain things, that this lower self starts to become so much of a shell and so hollow and so empty that there's not really anything connecting you to it anymore other than the absolute bare minimum, because we cannot completely cast off this lower self as long as we are alive on earth. That is not, it's not where we're at from an evolutionary perspective. It's just not where we're at. But we can really use it to learn so much about ourselves and refine the ego and refine who we are as individuals and develop so much integrity and develop so much character and really grow in our inner power. And it's a really beautiful thing. So with that being said, I invite you to watch. This is going to transition into the first module. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, even if you don't plan on taking the course, this is very valuable information that could be extremely helpful for you still. And if you do plan on taking the course, I have over 5 hours of video lessons. I have a somatic guided meditation, which is something I've never done before. And it was pretty fun to do, I'm not gonna lie. I may end up, people ask me to do this all the time, so I may just end up uploading something like that here for free, something separate that's not quite as long. I have a 23-page, very in-depth workbook where we go over somatic exercises. There are really deep journal prompts. You know, we're talking about really deep occult and anthroposophical topics in the entire course and in the workbook. And I wanted you to really have something material to be able to refer back to. And so I have, along with the workbook, I also have a 29-slide, very extensive slide, kind of like a PDF to follow along with the video lessons, so that you don't just feel like you have to retain all of this information off the top of your head. And I also put together a PDF for additional resources where I refer back to some other teachers and I link their work so that you can go if you would like to learn more after the course, and you can go to some of my different sources and go deeper on your own. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy. Hello again, and welcome to Module 1 of Overcoming the Lower Doppelganger. So I figured what I would do is kind of go through the slides that I've provided for you. And I especially wanted to do this in case anyone is having issues with their slides. I didn't want them to, you know, go into this and not know what I was talking about when I'm referring to different slides. So I'm going to kind of briefly go over each one and also use it as notes to refer to for myself to make sure that I don't forget anything, because this is an extremely important topic that, I mean, it's so broad and so deep, and there's so much that goes into it. So if you look at the first page, you should be looking at the kind of intro page. It just says, overcoming the lower doppelganger, freedom from the unintegrated shadow self, once and for all through the purifying and transformative qualities of the Christ impulse. And then if you go to page 2, it says, what is the lower doppelganger? And has a quote about the guardian of the threshold. So if you don't know, the guardian of the threshold is something that Rudolf Steiner has talked quite a bit about. And it is essentially when we get to the threshold into higher worlds, we have this figure that shows up, right? And the figure is this manifestation of our lower doppelganger or our lower double. And it's like we are being confronted with this lower aspect of ourselves. And this has actually been shown in various movies before. I can't think of the name of it, but there's this movie with Natalie Portman where she has to like fight her lower doppelganger or something. It's really crazy. But maybe the name will come to me. And that's essentially what happens is we get to this threshold where we cannot pass into higher worlds, into higher realms. We can't be further initiated until we have faced and overcome this aspect of ourselves. And this is not a punishment. This is not something that happens because, you know, we did something bad necessarily, and it's not a sign that we did anything wrong. It is actually very good and normal and healthy to have this experience where we face ourselves in this way, because if we don't, we will not be prepared to integrate these higher forces. We won't be prepared to see and understand the truth of humanity in the future. We won't be emotionally or mentally prepared for certain occult truths. So this is, if anything, it is a loving experience. It's something that is kind of given to us as a gift of protection and a gift of initiation. And so we want to approach this not with fear, but with reverence. We want to approach this meeting with this figure as something that, though it can be scary and it can be really intense, it's also something that is incredibly empowering when we are in a place where we are prepared to face it. And there are ways that we can prepare ourselves, and I'm also going to get into that too. So then when you go to the third slide, it says, also known as the double, the shadow self, or the guardian of the threshold, the lower doppelganger represents the subconscious, where one's lowest and darkest desires often manifest. Unlike the etheric double, which represents the vital body and is not associated with the lower aspects, the lower double is part of the astral body, and the astral body is not the same thing as the etheric body. Specifically, the part of the astral body that interacts with the lower astral. This is where we connect when operating from the lower nervous system, which Rudolf Steiner sometimes associated with the nervous system while it is in its sympathetic state. For those unfamiliar, this is the manifested survival response, also known as fight or flight. So this is what I was talking about a little bit in the intro video, where we have these experiences, right, where we're experiencing chronic stress or trauma or abuse. Maybe we're in an environment that's really unhealthy, or, you know, we could be in an environment that's perfectly healthy, but you turn on the news every day and it's traumatic, and then you have to go to a job that you hate, and then you're eating food that is bad for your body because groceries are so expensive, and you can't afford other food, and you can't connect meaningfully with other people because everyone is in this kind of zombified, dissociated, disconnected state. I mean, even just existing without added trauma in 2024, which is when I am filming this, is a trauma in and of itself. It can be so much stress on the nervous system, and so difficult for the nervous system. And I actually read the other day that financial stress in particular is one of the greatest contributors to disease within the body. And so if you think about all of the financial stress that so many people have been under and the way that that impacts all of us collectively. I mean, it's really huge. And I personally do not even see financial stress as being the worst thing that we're currently going through. So we end up kind of trapped in that sympathetic state. So many people are extremely dysregulated within the nervous system. In my personal opinion and experience as a somatic practitioner, I have seen way more people operating from this chronic sympathetic state, this chronic state of fight or flight, or they're in the state of shutdown, or they go back and forth, kind of oscillating between I'm in fight or flight, I'm shut down, you know, and it's creating a people that is so numb and so disconnected and in so much pain, and they do not know how to move forward. So these are some characteristics of the lower doppelganger. And when we get into kind of how this manifests, so if you go to the next page, we have the unconscious mind, the subconscious beliefs, and I kind of have those as two separate things, because we have the unconscious mind that is kind of the mind that is not really self-aware. It is not awakened to the realities of life or the realities of the supernatural or the subnatural, right? So I kind of see that as the unconscious mind. And then we have subconscious beliefs. And that is often associated with patterns that are kind of embedded in our nervous system when you're growing up and, you know, your parents are saying certain things to you, or they are treating you in a certain way that is kind of reinforcing these different beliefs about yourself, about the world, about other people within your nervous system. And it becomes this pattern that is quite literally programmed into the nervous system. And even when we're out of that environment and we're older and we logically know better, we still approach things. We approach the world. And in our relationships with other people, in the way that we interact at work or, you know, out in public, things will happen and it mirrors that programming back to us. And we end up feeling triggered and responding in ways that we don't necessarily feel like reflect who we are as people. We don't feel like they are in alignment with our higher self. And we can feel so much shame. And that's because we're kind of operating from these belief systems that we don't even really realize are there, because they're not mental. They're not materializing as thoughts necessarily. They're kind of embedded into the body and into the nervous system because they have not been expressed. So then we have other characteristics of the lower doppelganger being the lower ego, lower emotions. And I want to be so clear and say that, in my opinion, all emotions are so valuable and they're all very important and they all have something to teach us. So when I'm talking about lower emotions, I'm not approaching it from the standpoint of, oh, you felt anger and anger is automatically a lower emotion. You felt fear and fear is automatically a lower emotion. I'm talking about when these feelings become chronic states, or when we don't have control over them, we don't have a handle over them. So it is completely normal to experience justified anger, or to feel fear when there is an actual danger in the room with you. I mean, if you are a gazelle and you're being chased by a lion, you're going to feel fear. Would you shame that gazelle and say, you know, you stupid gazelle, you're supposed to meditate and overcome that fear? No, it's not. That's not going to save its life. But what happens is that we are not gazelles that are actively being chased by lions. We are human beings